So we're going to go back to 164. Sometimes people ask where actually in the Talmud, with the Talmud pagination. So this is Baba Metzia 87a. We did a lot of this last time. I'm just going to review it. This is where the angels or men come and they announce to Sarah that she's going to have a child. So actually, I'll start at the very top of the page 164. It's a quote from the Torah. This is Sarah speaking. Acharei viloti haitali edna. Which, literal, I'll just do the literal translation. After I am dried up, viloti, that's Sarah speaking, haitali edna. I should have pleasure from my husband.
Right.
So a lot's implied there, but how can I have a child? All sorts of problems with that. I'm dried up, my husband's dried up. So, Amar Rav Chisda. So Rav Chisda says, it's a really interesting way that he interprets this. Acharei shenit balaha basar v'rabu akmatim. So her flesh had dried up and she had all these wrinkles. V'nit adena basar v'nit pashtu akmatim. So what she's saying is they're interpreting this as she experienced the miracle at that moment. And they're rereading the verse for her exclaiming in wonder how she experienced that middle. That after my flesh is all dried up, now nitadeh, now suddenly I'm young again. Habasar, my skin has been smoothed out like Eden. You hear the word Eden there. V'nit pashtu akmatim, the wrinkles have all spread out. The wrinkles have all unwrinkled. V'chazar hayofi limkomo, and my beauty has returned. I like that. Chazar hayofi limkomo. The beauty has returned to its place. She's remembering that she was a natural beauty, and that's actually she thinks of that as her natural state, and she's returned to that natural state of beauty. So a very different reading of what happened in the tent. That Sarah actually at that moment becomes young and beautiful again. We're going to come up with a very interesting conflict with that sense of reading in a second, where we have some interesting discussion about what it means to be old. So some of you might be interested in that. I know I am. So, Ketiv Adoni Zaken. Okay, so now it says that she's complaining that her husband is too old. Adon, my Adon, my Lord, but my husband is old. Uketiv Ani Zakanti. But she also wrote that I'm old. I'm too old to have a baby. Delo Motif HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dikam Ra'ihi. When God reported the conversations, we've gone over this several times. God doesn't report the conversation completely. Tana Debe Rabbi Ishmael, as it's written from the students of Rabbi Ishmael, Gadol Shalom, peace is so great, Shafilo Kadosh Baruch Hu Shinaba, that even God would lie. The Shina, though, is not quite as strong as Lishaker. It means he's like a white lie. He just shifted how she spoke in reporting the conversation to Abraham. Shina, she made a change in it. Shinemar v'titzchak Sarah b'kirba v'gomer v'adoni zaken. Sarah laughed and saying that this is impossible, and this is impossible because my husband's old. But when God reports it to Abraham, uketiv vayomer Adonai al Avraham, God says to Abraham v'ani zakanti. He says God only reports that she's complaining that she's too old because it would hurt Abraham's feelings to think that his wife considers him old. So God doesn't report that because God wants to preserve peace in the household. Actually, just uses the word shalom. So our understanding is that it's shalom bayit, right? Which becomes a very important Jewish principle. Peace in the home, where you're even occasionally to lie. You're even allowed occasionally to lie. Even God lies to preserve shalom bayit. All right. We've talked about this before. I'm not going to go into it right now. We're going to go on. 10. Vatomer. So now we're quoting Sarah again. Mimi le'ala Avraham, heinika vanim Sarah. Who would have told Abraham that Sarah would be able to nurse children? So she not only gave birth to Isaac, but she nursed. And you remember, we're reflecting back on her exclamation that she's become dried up.
Right.
So, the rabbis understanding biology, and the relationship between old age and drying up in all sorts of ways. So now the miracle continues because not only does she give birth, but she's able to nurse. Okay. But there seems to be a problem in that verse itself because she's saying that Sarah can nurse children, there's the plural there. Kama banim henika Sarah. How many children did Sarah have? Well, she only had one. So why does she say, I can nurse children? Now they have this whole story, whole midrash that comes from that one question. So I'll keep going. Amar Rabbi Levi. So Rabbi Levi said, Oto ayam shegamal Avrama Yitzchak beno. The same day that they weaned Isaac. They used to have parties weaning parties. Actually, in the Torah, they talk about a weaning party for Isaac, the day that he's weaned and not nursing anymore. It's unclear exactly how old that is, really. In all sorts of cultures, it varies, right? And our culture varies from more ancient cultures. So anyway,
it varies from generation to generation.
Right. Anyway, but so maybe it was more standard then, and they had a party. And Shegamal Avram Yitzchak Asa Seudah Gedolah, made a big party. That is from the Torah recounts that. Now they're going to have a midrash to kind of add to what happened at the party. Hayu kol umot ha'olam mirananim ve'omrim. All of the nations were there. The interesting word here, mirananim. Mirananim in context means gossip. What's interesting is that you also have the word miranain as sing, or chant. So it's like they were chanting gossip. They were like gossip birds. You also have bird. It's a sound birds make. Interesting word. Anyway, all the nations of the world, which is interesting. Abraham invited everybody. Every nation was represented at that party, and they were all saying together. And this is what they were saying: Re'item zakenus kena. This old man, this old lady, sheviu asufi min ashuk. They brought a baby from the market. Is there a baby market somewhere? Or the Science actually translates it as a foundling. So the implication is they didn't give birth to this child. He was adopted, or they found him on the street. Ve'omrim b'neinuhu, and they're saying he's our child. What's the matter? And that's gossip. Of course, it's not so unfamiliar to us as gossip, where you take a little thing and you chat a little bit and you blow it up, and suddenly everybody's saying it. So everybody was saying that these two old people, they can't possibly have given birth. So they adopted, but they're telling everybody that they gave birth. What a joke. All right. Velood ela she'osim mishteh gadol lahamid divrayim. Not only that, they're making a big party to enforce their lie, to enforce what they said, that it's their child. Because it's not possible that she gave birth, or, by the way, that she could possibly nurse. But they're having a party just to, and this is what the gossip is, they're having a party just to reinforce their deception. They're deceiving us. Okay. All right, I'm going to keep going. Ma'asa Avram Avinu. So what did Abraham do? Halach v'zimein kol gedolei hador. So Abraham invited all of the elders. Well, gedolei hador actually means all of the leaders of that generation. V'sara imenu zimna neshotehem. And Sarah invited their wives. I guess that was the etiquette in those days. Abraham would invite the men. Sarah invites the wives. V'kol achad ve'achat hevia bena ima. And every one of them would bring their babies with them. So, Abraham presumably said, and bring your kids with you. We'll have like a water slide. We'll have a petting zoo. We'll have things to do for the kids. So bring your kids with you. But don't bring the nursemaids. They didn't bring the nursemaids. This is a party and you're off, and bring your children with you. You don't have to bring your staff. You don't have to bring your nursemaids. And nursemaids were common in those days. You have nursemaids in the Torah. All right. Vidna asanes b'Sara imenu, and then a miracle happened for Sarah. V'niftechu dadeha kishnei mayonot. Her breasts opened up like two fountains. V'heinika et kulan, and she was able to nurse all of the babies present.
Poor lady.
Yeah. So Abraham arranges this miracle just to show the gossips that indeed they gave birth to the baby. It's amazing. The rabbis would assume there would be this kind of gossip, and also that the gossip would have to do with can she nurse, or her ability to nurse. And they take this one little verse and they build that not only could she nurse, it's like this bragging about her ability to nurse. Not only could she nurse Isaac, she could nurse every baby in town. Bring them on. I'll nurse them all. So there's a lot going on here. So from a sort of a deep, let's say, symbolic point of view here, they're trying to show the great fertility of Sarah, the fertility even in old age, the possibility of doing great things, of passing on great teachings even in old age. Also, the idea of using moisture as a way of symbolizing kind of a renewed youth, the renewed youth for Abraham and Sarah. It's very interesting also.
It gives great credibility to the description of that Chaye Sarah as that opens up.
Yeah, it's true.
Because it enumerates her beauty, how old she was.
Right. She was just as beautiful at 100. Right. That's a famous midrash. She was just as beautiful at 100 as she was at 20.
What reinforces which? Is this to reinforce that, or is that to reinforce this?
Yeah. Or they go together. Somehow they go together. Yeah. Okay. But it didn't stop the gossips. So the gossips continue. We're going to go to V'adayin hayumin rananim v'omrim. They were still gossiping, and they would say, Im Sarah bak tishim shana teled. Okay, so we can see with our own eyes that Sarah is able to nurse because her breasts have become like fountains, and we see that. So we can accept that Sarah is the mother. However, what do gossips do? They wonder, is he really the father? Is Abraham really the father? Avraham ben mea shana yolid. Abraham, 100 years old, he can become a father? Okay, so now, here's what I want to say about this too, because the rabbis are even more clever than creative. So the creativity is very clear here, but the Sarah becomes pregnant right after one other significant story in the Torah. Anybody remember the story right before we find out that Sarah's pregnant? Yes. It's when Sarah, in fact, is kidnapped and taken to the royal family, the royal house. Right, because remember, Abraham says, say you're my sister, because otherwise they'll kill me. But the point is they want to marry Sarah, who at 90 years old is very beautiful still. Well, it doesn't say how old she is at that point, although the rabbis are assuming it. So the rabbis are saying the possibility is that story happened right before Sarah becomes pregnant, which could lead a wicked, gossiping mind to thinking Abraham wasn't the father, Avimelech was the father. Right, because, it's not so far-fetched. It's a wicked kind of thing to say, but why was Sarah kidnapped in the first place? To become part of Avimelech's harem, right? That was the whole point of it. So they're suggesting maybe it happened. Now, the Torah says that he never knew her, that they didn't have sex, that God stopped it from happening. But that's what the Torah says, right? It's a possibility that something else happened. So that could. So the rabbis actually spent quite a bit of time on that because they want to knock down that rumor. They're thinking the reader might have that idea. The reader's thinking, oh yeah, man. The author here is telling us it's a miracle, but we know what really happened. So the rabbis are putting that doubt into the mouths of these gossips. Let's keep reading. Here's what happened. Here's how we disprove that wicked rumor. Miyad nepach klaster panim shel Yitzchak v'nidma l'Avraham. So right away, Abraham became the spitting image of Isaac. I should say Isaac became the spitting image of Abraham. They actually say it was a miracle. The God made sure it happened. There's always resemblance between father and son, but now the resemblance became, you couldn't actually tell the difference. Isaac as a child looked exactly like Abraham, right? So that argument that parents have, I think he looks like the wife, I think he looks like the husband. There wasn't an argument in Abraham's family. He looks exactly like Abraham. And it's God doing them a favor to shut up the gossips. I wonder why God would get so involved in village gossip, but because Abraham's an important character. And all right, anyway.
Abraham could look like Abimelech.
Yeah. But you'll see where this leads us. It leads us to something actually really profound, something I've actually struggled over for a long time. So I'll keep going. Parchu kulam v'amru. So then all the gossip said, Avraham holidit Yitzchak. At that point, when Isaac looked so much like Abraham, all the gossips opened their mouths and said, clearly Abraham is the father. Avimelech is not the father, as soon as they saw that. Okay. All right, now you take a deep breath because you come up to some very interesting. We'll see how long we can stay with this. Ad Avraham lo hayu zikna. Until Abraham, there was no such thing as old age. Now, what does that mean exactly? So clearly people would. So there's a lot going on here. So obviously, at some point, and it doesn't say why. It hints at why, and it's not quite a gradual process. But it sort of happens from the long term, kind of in a gradual way. People live very long lives, right? Methuselah lives 993 years, or 930. I can't remember. Adam lives 930. Abraham lives 175. Right? So lifespans shrink quite a bit in the Torah itself. And then we learned that Moses lives 120. Nobody can live past 120. Okay. So what we don't know in the Torah is the effects of aging. So it's one thing to say that, let's say that 120 years old is very old and you die. What the Torah is suggesting here is that there was a limit to lifespans, but there was no such thing as aging. There weren't any obvious signs of aging, right? That that one day you just died. You died, but you didn't slowly weaken. There weren't signs on the face and the body.
Degeneration.
Sorry, degeneration. There weren't signs of degeneration. You would get older in years, and one day you would die. There was a limit until Abraham, in other words, was the first person ever to get old. Okay. Now, of course, we think of aging as being a curse. you think of all the symptoms and the gradual dying down and the difficulties, and they, believe me, they had it then, we have it now. What's interesting is the rabbis twist this and say Abraham was the first person to experience the signs of aging, the degradation, the symptoms of aging, and in fact it was a blessing that Abraham wanted it. So I'm going to keep reading. Man dehave bai lemishtai bahade Avraham, mishtai bahade Yitzchak. When someone would want to speak with Abraham, they would end up speaking with Isaac. Why? Because they looked exactly alike. Bahade Yitzchak, mishtai bahade Avraham. If they wanted to speak with Isaac, they would speak to Abraham. So they looked exactly alike, and that was a pain in the neck. Abraham actually wanted there to be some distinction between him and Isaac, so God invented aging, which is like, be careful what you wish for. You may not actually like the result of this. Okay. Ata Avraham. So Abraham comes along. Ba'arachme. Ba'arachme means requested mercy. Okay, but it's actually it's an idiomatic expression in the Talmud which just means prayed. But there is a sort of cruel play on words here. Abraham is asking for mercy. The mercy God gives is, okay, you want to have a difference in look between you and Isaac. I'll give you a difference in look. It's going to be called aging, and it's going to be for everybody from now on. Isaac is the first person. Now, they have this little story here. It's also based on a verse. Okay, I want to get to the verse, then we'll take questions. V'havi zikna. Okay, so Abraham prays, and God invents aging. Shene emar, as it says, Avraham zaken ba bayamim. Abraham is old and had many days. So two things to understand. One is, it's the first time a character in the Torah is called zaken, is called old. So now, rabbis don't take anything for granted. So if Abraham is the first person to be called zaken, as a physical description in the Torah, he must be the first person who actually aged. So Abraham's the first person introducing the concept of aging. Also, the rabbis are explaining the doubling. You don't actually need both phrases there. Abraham was old. Baba Yamin. Baba Yamin means he had many days. Okay, we already know that he had many days. So you don't have to tell us zaken. You don't have to tell us old. Why are you telling us old? Because it's something new. It's something new in humanity. Before Abraham, there was no such thing as aging. There were many days. People lived, long lives, or they would die at a certain point. But Abraham is the first person to age, and they actually prove it from that verse. And then they tell us this little story about why. So they start with the verse and then prove the whole zikna. And what's interesting to me and creative to me in some ways is that Abraham's the first person in the Torah, which they who the Torah identifies as old. So therefore, he must have been the first person who was old, and defining old as physical symptoms of aging. Yeah.
What?
I feel like you're all going to argue with me, but it's in the Talmud. I can't.
How do they explain Sarah? Sarah said she was old.
I know. Well, didn't I tell you? I told you like 10 minutes ago. I told us like 10 minutes ago that this is a conflict. Yeah, it's a conflict. It's a parallel reading. I mean, the person who wrote the Sarah midrash of her drying up didn't write this one about it. Really, it's two different ways of looking at things. Yeah.
Does this mean that people are born as adults? I mean, if you don't age, you have to start out at the same level.
I don't know. Not necessarily. I think when they say aging here, they're talking about elderly aging. Let's say pick an age. To go from baby to adolescence, let's say, is a coming into adulthood. It's development. You might not call that signs of old age. Technically, it is, right? I mean, biologically, it is. I mean, there's a process all through life. But I mean, look. Don't assume that they believe this. Believe me, they didn't believe it. They didn't believe Abraham was the first person to experience aging. They're clearly making a point here. I think you always have to read the Talmud as a collection of sermons. So you really want to understand what the sermon is, that there are benefits to aging. Abraham actually wanted. There's a benefit to not being young anymore.
Being able to hear, not be able to see.
Yeah, there's a benefit, and that's what the word zaken also means wisdom. There's a benefit to aging. Now you may not like it, and you wake up in the morning, you've got this pain, and you've got everything that you're dealing with, but there are benefits to aging. The rabbis here who are not so young themselves, are trying to open up your heart to the possibility that the thing that you're cursing most is actually the thing that could be a hidden blessing. And they find the hidden blessing there. So there's a sermon here. It's not a biology lesson, right? It's a sermon about being grateful for what you may not be grateful for. And the reason I know that for sure With aging, it's a little harder, although you can see it here, is the very next midrash is about sickness. And they actually find a benefit to sickness. Okay. Was there another question? Okay. Gosh, I think we're going to finish. Okay, well, I'll go on and we'll see if we're going to. Okay. Ad Yaakov lo haya chulsha. Until Jacob, there was no such thing as sickness. Okay, so with Abraham, you've got the physical signs of aging. And maybe, let's say, sort of a slowing down, and all that happens with Abraham. However, there was no such thing as disease. Now, it's the same thing. Jacob is the first character in the Torah where we actually have the word disease, that he gets sick. I mean, there's this invitation to Midrash and to come up with some kind of interesting exegesis or a sermon. So imagine, then Jacob introduces the whole concept of illness. There was never illness before. Jacob is the first person to become ill. Okay. Ata Yaakov ba'arachme v'hava chulsha. And the same thing happened. Jacob actually wanted to be sick. It's not so much that he wanted to be sick. He needed, well, I'll keep on reading. Shinamar vayomer liYosef hine avicha choleh. So this is they said to Joseph, remember, Jacob is old. So he's got all the signs of aging. And people had the signs of aging, and then one day they drop dead. There wouldn't be any warning because there wouldn't be sickness. Okay, so what's the disadvantage there?
You can't say goodbye.
You can't say goodbye. You can't say goodbye. You can't leave like your last statement because you're feeling fine, and then one day you die, which you think is a great blessing. That's what everybody wants. You don't want that period of being sick and being in bed, and you don't want that. Jacob wants it. So why does he want it? Because he wants to tell his son and his grandchildren. He wants to give them some lessons. He wants to prepare them for life without him. The only way you can get that is if there's actually physical signs that you're dying. And the physical signs that you're dying are illness. So there's no illness until Jacob. And it's a response to a request. Actually, ba'arachme, you actually have the same phrase there. Jacob asked for mercy. Jacob asked to be sick. It's not so much he asked to be sick. He said to God, I need some time before I die. And remember that Jacob does a lot right before he dies. He gives all these blessings to all of his kids, and he tells Joseph, and he sets up the whole family before he dies. The only way you can do that is if there's some physical warning before your death. Yeah.
Isn't there a lesson in this? And we see it with most people do these things before the end, before it's late. It's late.
Yeah.
But
you don't, right? I mean, because you don't know, you don't do them. So I mean, really, everybody in their life could think of people that they knew who it was awful. They were dying, but something amazing happened during that period. There was some amazing connections that only would have happened if the person was dying. I mean, there was messages back and forth. There was, love exchange back and forth. And I'm not, I would never say it was a blessing that they went through it. But this is kind of the depth of the rabbi's thinking here about the process of aging and illness, to be able to find blessing in it. To say that, okay, there's something great about being old. I can embrace those years. There's, in fact, something even great about fatal illness, because it allows me to prepare. After all, I'm going to die at some point. So it allows me to prepare. It allows me to prepare my family. And Jacob wanted that. So thanks, Jacob. Jacob introduces it for all of us. But again, don't think they believe it. You have to look. You look beyond it, and you find the sermon in it. Is there somebody else?
What about Isaac when he gave the blessing to Jacob?
So it's actually that so I'm not sure if that's here, but later that's a proof text, because in fact Isaac assumed he was dying and he was mistaken. So Isaac says, okay, Isaac's looking at a calendar and thinking, look, I'm 143. How many more years do I have? I better get my sons together. I better bless them. So blind they didn't consider an illness. But the thing is that the irony about that is that Isaac lives another 30 years. Isaac, in fact, wasn't dying. And that's what the rabbis even...
Blindness didn't
blindness doesn't kill you. And he wasn't responding to illness. According to the rabbis, there wasn't illness. I mean, so they're taking these little hints. The fact that Isaac was wrong, about thinking he was going to die, leads the rabbis to think, okay, he wasn't really sick because there was no such thing as sickness. And Jacob was the first person to have the symptoms of, let's say, physical illness, where you understand that you're going to die. You don't need a doctor. You don't need a CAT scan. You just feel it. Well, I mean, don't take it so literally. I mean, Jacob. They're saying Jacob is the one that feels these symptoms of his body shutting down, which no, is not the same thing as blindness. Blindness is like
In a somewhat
there's infirmities. And yeah, I get it. You don't want to take it too literally because you're talking about sermons here, right? You really are. Yeah. So I mean, you don't want to dig down too literally. You want to dig down and find out what's the meaning for human life. You know, you don't need to find 30 verses that contradict it in the Torah because that's not what's going on here. Yeah.
In a somewhat tangential opportunity here, I want you to know that we're going to talk about mandrakes tomorrow.
I would say that's somewhat tangential.
Mandrake the dog or Mandrake the magician?
Mandrakes to improve fertility.
Well, fertility is an issue here, so it's
Yeah.
not,
Oh, that's the magician then.
Yeah.
What's that?
Aren't the mandrakes? I'll talk about it tomorrow. Go ahead. Yeah, I was thinking about the
Be
mandrakes.
sure to
Yeah.
attend.
All right, last comment, Ron.
So from a psychological point of view, I often talk to my patients about how symptoms appear as solutions for their ills.
Yeah,
And in fact, that's a therapeutic approach. If you find a different solution, you don't need the illness.
yeah,
And so this is the same kind of thinking that
right.
the old age and infirmity were solutions for what these people needed. So that
Right.
actually goes along with modern psychology.
Oh, I think so for sure. I think it's amazing. It's the insight into. I mean, what do we hate most? Old age and illness, and then to take those and to really twist it to look like a blessing shows actually a real largeness of spirit here from the rabbis that they're trying to get across to us. I'm not sure it's totally successful. I don't think I've convinced all of you that it's great to be said. I don't think it's necessarily successful, but it's audacious enough that it catches our attention. That you can, especially as we come to Thanksgiving, that you can find blessing in even the worst circumstances, and that's it's a very powerful lesson and really real, authentic. It's in everybody's life. You know, my wife for much of her professional career worked in hospice, and you know the idea of that period being a sacred period really is something where significant things happen that you want to thank for as much as you're cursing it. It's very real for her profession, and for any rabbi, but anybody that's gone through it.
So leprosy is talked about later.
Later, yeah.
Later.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you.